talking about a wonderful thing called My D&D Campaign. I've been running with my stepdaughter and close personal friends who sit at home and stuff. Done wonderful. Now, grab some coffee, sit back, relax, and listen to this wonderful explanation of the insanity that is our shared game campaign space thus far. So, this particular world of D&D is themed after, shall we say, a several decades long war, a multi-generational conflict between warring nations of Herculean size. Being relatively equal in power and strengths, the continent-wide battlefield they do battle over has a no man's land in the middle of it. This particular story has this warring sides to be one elven, one draconic. Naturally, the draconic races, most of which have aligned with the dragons, who run a draconic empire. Imagine, if you will, Dragonborn being in charge of barbarian clan holds, but also being in charge of cities, and dragons running entire districts. Imagine, if you will, literal dragon governor over a city. So, as these things have taken root, the draconic empire has spread out a little bit, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon, because the dwarves have remained neutral and have only recently taken sides fully in the war. Paid by draconic gold, of course. So, we enter a world that has been artificially at war for much longer than the conflict should have been going on. So yeah, people are aware that the war has been going on for a very long time. No one knows why or exactly how. Armies trade places in the night. Conflict occurs in the no man's land as battalions from either side enter, do battle, and vanish into the night as legions march every few years into the no man's land to do battle, to meet in conflict that shifts very little to either side. The no man's land on either side of the middle of that area, there's Center City. Center City is a absolutely massive neutral faction. It's in the middle of no man's land. So battles often taking place around it, wheeling around it, with it as a central focal point, because controlling access in and out of the central city is a big deal. Because if you control access to central city, you get their support because they're behind you. Once you get beyond central city, the war becomes easy to tie into your favor because you've got a whole another nation that's been growing verticality for hundreds of years, that's fed off of this conflict on either side of it, that it's just been trying to maintain neutrality in, and it's very hard to do. And so part of the difficulty of this world is that this conflict has been going on for so long that the area outside Central City is an absolute wasteland. So traveling to and from Central City is done primarily through three central means: by foot or convoy, wagons, the normal I'm traveling in a wasteland method, usually best done in contingents and army sizes, because roving bands of marauders, raiding parties from either side are constantly roving the countryside looking for anyone out of place. Anyone not with military identification, even sometimes with, will get randomly attacked. You get strays, you get deserters, You get loose magical abominations from either side, just roving the countryside. So the No Man's Land is extremely fucking dangerous, but it is the mundane way. It does exist. There are roads in and out, and they are dangerous as all hell. Now, the other way in and out of Central City is a thing called the Lightning Rail. It is a dwarven Magitech train that uses interplanar travel to go between destinations. It has something it rides on called the Etheric Rails. These are a variety of metal and lightning-based things and artifacts and various arrangements that create the Etheric Rails. Now, sometimes the Etheric Rails are sets of telephone pole-sized spikes driven into the earth that emit lightning on top of them. Sometimes they're literal train tracks that are made out of Ethereum. Depending on which stretch of track you're crossing, it can be different things. When it was built, how it was built, what it was built with, differed, but the general consensus is that it rides on the power of lightning. This is not true, but the general knowledge is that it is riding on the power of lightning. The third way is by airship, and this is equally dangerous, because if you can just fly, well, so can dragons. Dragons have a much natural access to the world of the air, and the other races tend not to. Elven airships are particularly agile in an attempt to counter the draconic air superiority. So they are light, fast, nimble, and hard to pin down, so that they can avoid the dragons. They do have a few larger airships that make transit around, but most airships tend to be of elven or fey make, because of course they are. So, this is the world into which my players entered. We started with a simple, here's the players, they're in a backwater town on the edge of southwestern No Man's Land in Draconic territory. And one of the players is the local priestess, the daughter of the local tribal chief. It's a village so far gone and remote from anything important that its most important commerce is beets. Literal beets. It's a farming community. It's just out in the nowhere, surviving on its own. Now, it's fairly sizable. It's interracial. It's a mixed community living on the edge of the No Man's Land. So most rulers in the areas tend not to give a shit about their village because it's just podunk nowhere. So it's a quiet, fairly well built up village just off in the sticks by itself. Its main notable product that is exported regularly by the caravans that come in and out is beads. So anyone traveling there knows they're jack shit here. And so some of the players are travelers that are coming in and being dumped here or arriving here for various reasons, or passing through here on their way to somewhere else as part of that merchant caravan. Now, the merchant caravan is, let's just say, Russian-inspired. And so he is a man of low morals, low repute. He's a merchant of, shall we say, I have products for sale. Don't ask too deeply of their origins, but I have them. So he has a variety of magical items for sale. And so during this stop at this wayward village, he offers his magical wares to both residents, persons of the convoy, and the like. This is a crossing point of a couple of convoys of merchants, just for today, just for this evening. And so one convoy going one direction, one convoy going the other, and they meet up and they spend the night in the local tavern. And so Ivan is one offering the players his wares, and they're, of course, fantastical and outrageous. Half of his claims are not true, half of them are. That's the hook, is that some of the things he's offering are genuinely magical artifacts of immense power. Telling the difference between what is and is not is the hook. So, for a massive, exorbitant fee, one of the dwarven players buys what is claimed to be the holy weapon of one of their an ancestral hero of the Dwarven Kingdoms, a Dwarven Paladin. It is actually, in fact, a ancient holy Dwarven weapon that is immensely powerful, and they begin swinging it around, and they realize, holy shit, he was telling the truth. The massively overbloated price he was asking for was worth it, because this had signed him, his clan, and their perpetuity into a massive debt. Absolutely astronomical. And the player taking the leap. If this is true, if this is really the thing you say it is, it's worth every goddamn penny. Give it. And so he had a loan broker assigned to him of, oh, I'm going to escort you, and the boss says I am to make sure you make your payments on time. And basically, he's got a thug that follows him around. And so they're there, they're relaxing, enjoying an evening, they're testing the new weapon, and the local player basically introduces them to, hey, you're new around here, what's going on, hey, what's up, and their local chief comes in and says, hey, the daughter is missing, or the daughter's friend is missing, I should say, sorry, not the daughter, but the daughter's friend is missing, and there's like, they're thinking, like, okay, like, the parents are fine, they're gonna be okay, but the daughter's friend is missing. And there's a couple of theories the chieftain has, is that either she snuck off to go be with a boy, or she's doing stuff she shouldn't do. And so there's a lot of, like, suspicion. It's like, alright, you know what? We're worried about her. There's been monsters in the area recently. I want to pay you guys to go find the girl. Bring her back alive. Don't hurt her. She's not in any trouble. Just go get her and bring her home. And so the players go to the local player and go, hey, we're new around here. We're trying to find this person. And she goes, oh, yeah, that's my friend. I know where she might be. She might be with a boy, maybe. Let's go find out. It's like half a day's journey travel there. Would be why she's vanished and been gone for a while. If she's gone out there to spend time with the boy, it's a ways out there, but that's where she would go to be more than a day's travel away from the village. All of the sneaky children that might be spying on her can't reach her because she's further out than they're allowed to go. There's privacy where they're going. Okay, makes sense. Okay, I'll take you guys with me. She gets permission from her father, the village chief, to go. And so they say, okay, we're gonna go find them, if it's the two of them, and bring them back. So they go through that process. So they're traveling out there, and it's an old, abandoned church around a eldritch symbol. Now, much that the players do and don't know is that the world is founded on a massive labyrinth of huge intertwining tunnels. What is and is not kind of known about the world is that it is founded on the top of a massive subterranean culture of giants. They're paranoid and deadly and just everywhere. The whole world is standing on the backs of labyrinths of absolutely gargantuan size. So anywhere in the world that you go digging, you're going to find tunnels. subterranean networks. And generations of built up explorations, forays, little entries into that subterranean world of the ancient giants. So there's magic and power under the ground pretty much everywhere of just random junk and shit, and generations of explorers and adventurers and people moving in to take advantage of the space or the magical effects therein or the artifacts hidden inside. So those ruins underground are always there, pretty much wherever you go in the world. And so they go into this ancient church with this eldritch symbol carved into what they know is the unbreakable basalt walls of the labyrinth tunnels, and they go, okay, this part of rock here has this symbol in, and it's part of this massive subterranean network of tunnels. What's going on here? And they realize that in the middle of this church there's a hole, and their new friend, is able to tell them, that's new. There's not supposed to be a hole here in the middle of this church. Like, most of the floor is gone, and there's a big sloped tunnel that leads down. And now it's like a steep tunnel. It's not a tunnel by which you are getting back up by climbing, because it's that steep. Like, it's not, like, that's a one-way trip. If that opened beneath someone, that would explain why they have vanished. So they're sitting there hemming and hawing over what to do about it. And just as they do so, they're like, okay, I'm not sure we should do this. Like, that's, we could go get ropes. We could try and rappel our way down. No. As they're doing that, they hear screams from below, from inside the tunnel. And they're like, oh, shit. Okay, we're here to rescue someone. 2, we just heard someone screaming from the tunnel below. I'd say that's pretty clear evidence right there that 1, the ride is survivable, or might be, depending on how recent. Like, the hole isn't too recent, like it didn't happen a few minutes ago, so they know that this isn't a slide into death, but someone might be trapped or in danger down at the bottom. So like, okay, we're gonna jump down the hole. Well, at least the player that's the Dwarven Paladin goes, I jump down the hole. I hear someone screaming and in danger, down we go. So the party naturally follows. Ivan, the bounty bodyguard, goes, Ivan, not that stupid bye. So the guy enforcing the Dwarven debt watches the Dwarven Paladin, with the extremely expensive lifelong debt to pay off, jump down a hole into the abyss and go, haha, no, I'm not that dumb. So, first stage of things going wrong or not quite planned. So they slide down this tunnel into the abyss. It's a long ride, but eventually they hit the bottom, and it's a chamber. In this chamber is a large set of, like, hedgerow tumbleweed traps. Like, think D-Day hedgehogs. Big steel pointy affairs, but they're made out of wood. So big cavalry spikes wrapped in brambleweed and just filling the room for the most part. And at the entrance to the room is a goblin with a torch trying to light the room. So they're like, hey, asshole, we're in here. So they chase down the goblin. In the next series of rooms, they find various artifacts and magical doodads and whatsits and various challenges therein. And so they eventually fight their way through various goblins and other dungeon denizen monsters, eventually finding their way, tracing the yells and screams, which they eventually determine to be the male elven voice. And so the friend is like, that could be my friend's boyfriend? Maybe? I can't quite tell. It's screaming. It's not very distinct. So they follow the voices. They find an elf being cooked by goblins over a fire. He's been tied up onto a rotating arrangement that he's rotating over in nude, being cooked, and it sounds as if he has just been placed over the fire because he's starting to really wail. So they bust into the room, kill the goblin chefs, free the guy, and the girl is like, that's not my friend's boyfriend. I don't know who this guy is. And he's like, holy crap, I was about to die. They were cooking me alive. Do you have any water? I'm covered in spices. His name is Roman. He's an elven prince. This takes a moment to sink in with the party. It's like, wait a minute. You're a what? You're an elven... We are hundreds of miles behind the warfront. In draconic territory. And you're an elven prince. How the fuck did you get here? So that's... The guy's there. Is the... Okay. What the fuck? We're in the labyrinth. You're an elven prince. Way the hell behind enemy lines. And they inform him thusly, like, dude, we are miles behind the edge of the front of the war. No Man's Land is thousands of miles, like, that way. And we're over here somewhere. Now, so it's a, okay. He's very confused. He understands that he took a portal during some of his explorations and he was unconscious when he was taken prisoner. And so he explains that, yes, there were others where I was being kept. I've spent most of the past few days in and out of being unconscious by being bludgeoned in the head. There's an ogre leading these goblins, and he's been eating people. So it's a, oh, well, crap. That explains what's going on here and why they were closing that entrance, is they'd captured someone and were like, oh hey, a surface entrance. Let's close that off. So they were trying to burn out the room and collapse the room to seal the entrance. So, during all of that process, they begin to battle their way out, and into the next rooms. They fight their way through the next few rooms, and they come to what is obviously the ogre's current dining area, where they find the remains of the boyfriend. Half eaten. And it's like, oh, well, we know where the boyfriend is. So, yes, she was out here at this long, forgotten, forbidden church having nookie time with her boyfriend. Because if the boyfriend's here, she's here. And so they go, and they find where they're being kept. Like, Roman, the prince, is able to help players find where the girl is being kept. And they also decide, alright, this ogre, he's gotta die. And so they confront him, they start fighting him. Oxymoronically, he pulls out a horn, blows it, and vanishes. The party's like, the fuck? Did he just teleport away? What the shit? What just happened here? And so the party's like, okay, I guess he's gone? Works for me? I mean, okay. I'm not gonna fight with it. The ogre is gone. He really hurt, so I'm glad he's gone. Little did they know they'd done more than half of his hit points of damage, so he was like, fuck this! Now, the fact that I was still running turn order kind of gave it away, but he wasn't really gone. Various spot checks later, they realized he's invisible. And so they attack him, and he attacks back, thus breaking his invisibility. But during the magical attacks back and forth, there's a number of like explosions and things that are happening, and they're attacking back and forth. So the horns blowing, the stomping around, the throwing of characters around. Something has been shaken loose. Something that, you know, through one explosion or the other, or one horn blow or the other, has come loose. And the players don't know it, but everything is about to change. So, this massive section of wall that is actually the room that they are in, that is several layers of foundation, of generational exploration of this tunnel network, detaches from the mountainside above and begins to slide as the whole stuff is collapsing and crunching in on itself. So, if you will, imagine a massive cavern with an anthill leading up the side that slopes up and goes like this, as multiple generations have built up and sealed off this entrance to this room. Beyond, this massive cavern in the mountainside beyond. Absolutely gargantuan, huge cavern that has been filled in over multiple generations. Thousands of generations of years of explorations, fill-in, collapses, various things. So something has come loose, and the whole room has detached and begun to slide. I can tell thus as the room breaks up and shatters around them, and the rubble is heading down a hillside with them in it. Various players grab onto various things or persons. Some of the party members grab onto the horror mix nightmare that is the ogre's bedding. It is a shuffit stuffed bramble of twigs and branches and undergrowth and hides and furs and flesh that is just kind of loosely packed by the ogre's sheer weight. Some of the players are just loose in the room. Now, as the rubble comes to a halt, the bedding pops up and out and is ejected out onto a underground lake of essence of undeath. You heard me. A massive underground lake of essence of undeath. Now, this is a huge deal. It slides out onto this lake of undeath and begins to sink. And not only is it essence of undeath, it's also acidic. It's an acid. So the players on the raft and the players on the land kind of come to and are realizing, oh shit, we are in an absolutely gargantuan, huge underground cavern. We can see back the way we came, light. So that collapsed and left a massive gaping opening that leads down this slope to the edge of this underground lake in this huge chamber that is a huge lake of essence of undeath. We can see on the far side of the lake the sleeping forms of skeletal wyverns. Like, oh, fuck. If we are here too long, those things are going to find us. And as they're deciding what to do and how to get free, skeletons begin emerging from the lake. It's like, oh, shit. That's not good. So the players on the land throw a grappling hook to the players on the raft of filth and begin pulling it in. Now, as they're pulling the raft in, they realize it's not a raft, it's a loose amalgam of bedding. You pull too hard and the thing is going to disintegrate under the feet of the players on it. Not only is it sinking and disintegrating and coming apart, it's not intended to be held together by anything more than weight and pressure in the first place. It is not a sturdy vessel. So, you need strength checks, but you also need to not overdo the strength checks. So you need to make the strength checks to pull the raft, but not pull too hard so that the people at the end of the rope just disintegrate the raft underneath them and fall into the essence of undeath. While players on the land are fighting the skeletons, so that the people pulling the raft can keep pulling the raft. They eventually get the players back on land and flee back up the mountain of rubble, or so they would. It's too hard to navigate. They can see corpses rising from the rubble behind them. And so it's a, ooh, the freshly dead, risen by the essence of undeath. Okay. Door. Do we see any doors anywhere? Amongst the rubble of collapsed buildings and chunks, they find a door. They're like, perfect. Horde of undeath coming out of the essence of undeath. Wyverns across the lake. Dead coming from down the slope towards us. We're gonna go through that door. So they charge to the door, they're running down hallways, like, hey, intact. Dungeons, ruins, let's run through these. So they're charging through that, and it leads into more of the impenetrable sections of the dungeon eventually. Where it's like, hey, this abuts that basalt, the indestructible basalt walls. It's carved with ancient symbols and things of magical carvings. That's cool. They find, and through one of the secret passages into the basalt wall, they find a lantern archon with a massive backpack. It's magic, that's why, and that's how. Yes, Lantern Archon can carry the backpack because it's a magical backpack. Of course, it's an interdimensional magical backpack that opens to a random plane every 24 hours. So it has a special pocket that you can open, and it will lead to a random plane of existence every 24 hours. Now, while they happen to be camping out with this particular Lantern Archon, he opens up his bag, and it's the eternal wheat fields of Elysium. And they're like, oh, holy crap. And so the thief is like, hey, can we have some of that? Since it's right there, can we just reach in and take some of that? And he's like, I don't see why not. So they reach in and steal some god wheat. Because they can. So yes, the Lantern Archon is revealed to be he's a very absent-minded retriever of souls. He's very behind, and he's very sidetracked, and he's got so much that he needs to do, and so much that he needs to take care of, and he's like, oh, I'm so behind, I've got to find this one person that I'm looking for. And he's been taken on this quest and the other, and he's explaining his stories and his voyages to the players, and it's a relaxing afternoon's camp with a Lantern Archon looking after them as they rest. He's like, well, I'm here, and you need to rest, and who better to watch over you all night and let you guys get some sleep and let you know if the zombies are coming than an Archon. I'd totally tell you if they're coming. Well, they leave him behind the next day. He's like, I'm going the other way. The undead won't give me any trouble because I'll just fly over them, and I'll just be gone. I'm faster than the wyverns. They won't catch me. You guys are welcome to go the other way. The tunnel I came through, you would have to swim through. I don't breathe, so water isn't a problem for me. So they go the third direction. And as they go the third direction, they find out that it leads to a set of deep caves inhabited by kobolds. One of the party members is a kobold. And so they're like, hey, this is really cool. My people! My people! The tunnels are gradually getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Because kobolds. We don't need a big tunnel, we just need a small tunnel. So this is making it harder and harder for the large size Dragonborn to get around. It's like, these tunnels are tiny and built for small people. I don't fit. I'm not gonna fit through that door. It's like, the door is this big. I am twice that size. There's no way I'm fitting. Forgive me, salmon chowder. Mm-hmm. Right. So, over the next few weeks that it takes them to clear out tunnels so they're big enough for their larger party members to get through, the kobolds, using the kobold player as an intermediary, explain that the collapse was loud and heard all over the place. It's disrupted a lot of their old tunnels. They know of currently only one way back to the surface, and it leads through an intersection that leads past an entrance to Underdark. And so the players are like, okay, so we have to go down before we can go up? And it's like, yes, you have to go a lot down. So, the players now take a voyage down an extremely rickety elevator that's barely big enough for kobolds. They spend a week and a half, if I remember correctly, retrofitting the elevator to be big enough and safe enough to carry the players down the mile and a half they have to go to the bottom of a sheer cliff. So they take that journey down, and it leads to, like, at the bottom of that elevator, that rope elevator, is a entrance cave that has a number of entrances, one of which goes down further to the Underdark. And they're like, okay, we can't go that way. But which tunnel entrance is it? And so that leads back to the surface. And so there's multiple caves, and they're like, okay, let's take that one. Now, part of what's at the bottom is that, hey, there were supposed to be a group of kobolds from the clan hold down here, but instead there's only bodies. Somebody's been through here recently and killed everyone who was down here. Okay, not cool. So, the party explores the area around and eventually finds a tunnel entrance they think leads back to the surface. And so they're like, okay, this is perfect, we can use this. So they're taking that tunnel entrance and they come across a massive gorge that they're on one side of. Now, as they're traveling across this gorge, on the other side of the gorge, a massive underground cavern with, basically a canyon in the middle of it, they see another group crossing as well. And they're like, oh, that's gotta be the people who killed all the kobolds earlier. If they're headed for the surface, they must have chosen a different cave entrance. And so, using various spot checks and insights and magical artifacts, they peer across the gorge and find out, oh, I know who that is. That's a dwarven oathbreaker. Like, that is a dwarven paladin who's broken his oath. I can tell by his armor. I can tell by his household sigil that's on his armor. I know who he is. And I'd say, oh, he is a well-known dwarven blackguard who is bad business. Wanted for the murder of entire villages. So it's like, he is bad news. He is super bad news. Him heading to the surface is really, really, really bad news. So, 1, we got the girl. 2, we lost the boyfriend. 3, there's an undead cave that's now exposed to the surface. 4, there's now an dwarven blackguard, oathbreaker, headed for the surface. We now have many reasons to get back to the surface. So they're traveling along. They eventually find a mycenoid cavern. It has fresh air blowing through it. Like the smell of spores kind of overpowers some of the scent, but it's okay, there's fresh air coming from that way. And of course, it's carrying the spores further down into the cave. So the things are getting spore-like as they're heading up. And like, okay, they fight some mycenoids in a series of caverns, and they find a secret exit to the surface behind a large pool, which turns out to be a fountain in the backyard of a giant mansion. This overgrown, dilapidated, ancient, abandoned. And so they exit out, and they're like, okay, there's... like, this is some kind of secret exit from the Underdark into the backyard of a abandoned mansion. The fuck? Where's... I don't know. Yeah, the local girl is like, I don't remember anything about a mansion anywhere near my village. There's nothing. Like, I have no idea where this place is. And as they explore the garden in the backyard, they discover an undead troll with a giant, flaming, human-shaped club. It's like a mummified man on fire being held by the troll. They're like, okay, 1, he's undead. 2, he's magic. 3, he's wielding a giant club that's on fire that's made of a person. The fuck is going on here? So they observe him from a distance and see him going back and forth to a door and a sigil in the middle of an area. And like, okay, so the closest way to get out of this garden is the wall behind him adjoining the edge of that house there. So they try to sneak past the troll to get over the wall and out. Because there's other things patrolling the garden. They're like, okay, we don't want to fuck with that. We don't want to fuck with that. We want to get out of here. We want to leave. We've got shit to do. We've got people to warn. There's something here. This is a weird mansion. And the fuck. They're almost out when Roman... I should mention he has fairly good stats. He fucks his stealth roll. And so it's a... oh, fuck. He's lured into the troll. So now they have to fight the troll. They fight the troll. They fight the troll. They kill the troll. The troll explodes. So does the sigil at his feet, blowing open a chunk of the wall. They don't know it, but they've just destroyed a very powerful magical glyph and its guardian. So, they go, alright, we can now get back to the village. They get out of the mansion, they can start looking at the surrounding area and go, okay, I know that mountain. That mountain needs to go that way. They find their way back to the village. Now, as they return to the village, something is happening. They return to the village and they see, hold on, there's people here. Like, they begin to notice people in the village that are just absolutely disgustingly filthy. Like, not, I'm a peasant and I don't bathe regularly, filthy. Like, just rolled in muck and filth every day for their whole lives. Just disgusting. The people that are like this are just downtrodden, dead, defeated inside. You look in their eyes and you see nothing but despair. But they begin to react. They're like, wait a minute, you see me? They're like, well, of course we see you. You're filthy. You're disgusting. Go clean yourself. Are you okay? What's going on? Where are you from? And all over the village, this is playing out. Like, people are seeing these people, and they're like, who are you? What's going on here? And there's shrieks and screams from other places in the village. Blood-curdling screams. And they're going around the village like, what's going on? Where did these people come from? And they see, at various places in the village, people embracing these just filthy individuals and just screaming and crying. And they get one of these people and they go, I'm a hunter. I can't explain what happened to me. I went out into the village, I went out hunting one day, and I encountered a mansion. And when I went home, no one saw me anymore. And I couldn't bear to leave. No one reacted to what I did anymore. No one could see me anymore. I went hunting with my son. I found the mansion, and he was left wandering the woods for hours looking for me when I was standing right next to him. He couldn't hear a word I said. I passed right through him like a ray. Nothing I did mattered. I could eat, but most things would just pass right through me. I could take food, and I could eat, I could drink water, but I couldn't bathe because I couldn't substantiate long enough the food in my hand, or the soapstone, or the rags with which to wash. They would just fall through me. And so I just gave up. And I discovered there were others like me who were just as lost, just as irrelevant, just as vanished. And it's been like this for years. Anyone who saw the mansion became a wraith. Invisible, untouchable, unhearable. For generations, people have been vanishing in the woods. We'd always thought it was monsters. But no, it was that mansion. The magic of the mansion concealed it, and anyone who saw it. Imagine the generational trauma being healed in that moment. You broke that glyph. You revealed the mansion. You also blew up an exit. You also freed a magical prison the villagers had been trapped in for generations. Simply by taking the secret exit to the Underdark, fighting your way out of the mansion, killing the troll, and destroying the glyph. So the villagers fucking absolutely love the players at this point. They are like, you freed us, you freed, my father's been missing for years. We thought he was dead. We thought monsters had killed him and dragged him away and eaten him in the woods. But he's here. And that heartfelt reunion got to happen because they did what they did. Because they fucked up. But they didn't know what they were doing. And they did the right thing. They went, alright, we can't just leave the troll chasing us and head back to the village and just have it chase us back. It will catch up eventually and someone will die. So they fought it and killed it and kept it from following them. It's the right thing. They've made the right call. Now, at this point, they're trying to decide what to do. They're like, okay, this is really fucked up. We need to tell everybody what's happened. So they eventually, with everything that's been going on, they talk to the village elder, and they take him to the home of one of the player characters that's from the village, and they go, hey, here's what happened. Here's everything and everyone. And so, like, okay, so, number of things. One, massive gaping hole in the countryside that leads to a lake of undeath with undead in. We need to do something about that. Two, ancient undead mansion that was magically sealed for Lord knows how long. That probably has wealth in of some kind. There's also leaking undead because we blew it open. So that's two problems we need to solve. We solved the problem of the girl. She's now home, returned to her father, traumatized from watching her boyfriend get eaten partially alive by an ogre. So that's a thing. So they're now in this point of, the fuck do we do now? Holy shit. So, they decide, alright, we're gonna go deal with the mansion first. That's important and bad news. So, as they're making their choices, they're talking about what they're gonna do and where they're gonna do it. They inadvertently spill the beans to the whole village by people listening at doorways and windowsills and various things. That they have with them a prince of the Elven Kingdom who is like, "Hi, I actually need to go back to the hole in the mountain because in the hole in the mountain is my things. I'm an Elven Prince. Do you see a ring on this finger? Yeah, I need that. That's proof of who I am. I need that back because it proves I'm the Dwarven Prince, or not Dwarven Prince, but Elven Prince. Excuse me. Sorry. Fans of both sides will now jump down my throat for confusing elves and dwarves. But that goes on to, hey, I need to go back because my signet ring is somewhere in that fucking rubble of that room. It's my shit. I need it back. Thank you for the pink negligee that I've been wearing since we left. I'm deeply sorry that it was the only spare clothing you guys had on your persons when you left, because that meant you were woefully unprepared and didn't have any spare clothing at all. Let's fix that, get me some proper clothes, get you guys some spare clothes and proper adventuring gear. And so now, back in town, heroes, having been working on next to no supplies, now properly gear up as adventurers. They now use the money and the wealth they have recovered from various bodies and various enemies and foes and things to gear up better and to go take on the mansion. Now they want more money to get better supplies, so that's what they do. They go to the mansion. In going to the mansion, there's a variety of magical traps inside the mansion. Hosts of undead and things to kill. They find a lot of very posh, very wealthy loot and gear and equipment. Most of it's unusable, most of it's decayed to the point of worthlessness. Some of it isn't. But during that process, they find a number of trapped rooms. With the juiciest of loots in, of course. In these rooms, one of which is a time slip room. This is where I introduced the concept of time slip magic in my world. Now, they discover a library, a private library, and reading one of the books takes the player's party through a time slip, where they discover a possible alternate future of the character reading the book. Nicholas, a future where he's married and wealthy and a noble, and holding a gala in the honor of someone. They also find alternate versions of the rest of the party in that gala. And they're like, okay, that's me, but bigger. What? How? You know, the draconic barbarian, who is size large, is size huge and takes up most of the dining hall. And they're like, that's me, but way bigger and a lot more scars. Ooh. And so they're finding various members of the party in that gala. I'm like, hey, what are you doing here? What? No, it's impossible. You're an imposter. You can't be me. And so they fight their way through the magical traps they're in. And the whole thing is one big magical trap. And so this is where they find out that there's some kind of magical link between Roman and the native girl of the village. Like, okay, that's weird. What's going on with that? It's there. It's a thing. We don't quite know what it is. You both have glowing armband tattoo things. The fuck is that about? And it's like, not important. We'll talk about it later. So they fight their way out of the mansion with their loot. Now, one of the things they got as loot is in one of the treasury rooms in the mansion. There is a time stop room. So they're like, okay, inside the room you can see figures in the midst of battle. Frozen in time. Okay, how do we disable this? And so they figure out a way to disable the time stop room. And they intervene in the battle therein, and one of the new players is one of the people frozen in that room. And so they find out that this person had been sent along with various other members of the party. They were with time to loot a well-known mansion. So they were fighting the guards, they got time stopped in this treasury room, and no one came back to check on them. Ever. Which implies that the rest of the party either brilliantly succeeded or died horribly. Probably both. So, swamp druid person warlock thing acquired. I guess. New party member. So, they now begin adventuring with the party. And they go back and they're like, okay, we've got the wealth from the mansion now, or what of it we could find. Let's take a look at what's going on here. They go back to the city. I'm remembering the order of things for a hot second. They go back to the city, and on their way back to the city, they discover an army of the undead approaching. And they're like, okay, what? So, the group takes part in rallying the defense of the town against the undead. Now, this is a huge, epic, multi-part battle where we've got the party is split. The party is fucking everywhere. The party's running around the town, defending various parts, and fighting a battle here, fighting a battle there. And as they're defending the city against the undead, like against some truly staggering numbers, they're like, okay, shit's getting foobar, everybody retreat, do the things. And out of the crowd of the undead comes the Dwarven Blackguard. And it's a, oh shit. It makes sense. The Dwarven Blackguard was here for the undead army around the Lake of Undeath. We're just the first on his killing spree. Okay then. So they fight the Dwarven Blackguard. Now, side note, while that's been going on, the players had returned home, and they discovered that they had been gone long enough that the native player's parents had an egg. She's a dark elf adopted child of dragonborn parents. Let that sink in for a hot minute. Anyway, so they discovered, hey, there's the parents, there's the egg. They discovered that last time when they were here for the mansion. Anyway, the point is that accompanying this undead invasion is a wraith demon. He's only partially in this world. And he's here, child. The Dragonborn, who's only recently been born as an egg. And say, I want that egg. So they're like, no, you can't have the egg. You can't have the child. Screw you. Screw you and the horse you rode in on. So they're fighting the demon. And the demon, at one point in the battle, goes, fuck this, I'm just gonna go straight through the fucking wall because I'm a demon. Ah! And smoke forms through a wall. The party frantically rushes around the egg. They're like, oh no, he's going around us. He's decided to go, no, fuck you, I'm just gonna ignore you and go for the egg. Players rush past him, surround the egg, and the sister, the adopted daughter, scoops up the egg and says, "No, you can't have Snibs. He's mine." The demon lets out a colossal roar, because in this world, name magic is a thing. And the child has just been named, which according to normal Tronic culture, children are not named until they're hatched, because you can have the habit of naming the egg only to have it never hatch. You don't give it a name until it hatches, because you don't know if it's going to live that long or not. So, that's the thing of, hey, you gave him a name in the shell, thus protecting him from the demon's magic. Or at least most of it. Now, while that's occurring, the battle with the demon is happening. The paladin is off fighting the dwarven blackguard in a battle to the death. The battle is going pretty well for both sides. It's a pretty give and take. Now, the demon one is defeated, and it's like, oh, you defeated my plan. It named the child. He doesn't tell them that, but he lets out a howl of anger and opens a portal. All of his minions begin getting sucked into the portal. He's like, no, I'm recalling everything. I'm taking my toys and I'm leaving. He's a sore loser. The Dwarven Blackguard is in the middle of fighting Paladin when a portal opens behind him and begins pulling him in. He's like, wait, no! And he's getting pulled in to the black portal behind him, being dragged across the ground. And Hildegard says, no, you'll not deny me this victory! You'll not escape me! And chops off one of his arms. Well, one of his hands, really, from out there forward. The Blackguard loses a hand. Hildegard now has the hand of a Blackguard. So that's a thing. The epic defense of the town aside, there are many deaths. A large portion of the village's population died despite their best efforts. And this is days after a reunion with lost family members who've been gone for generations. So it's a thing. This is a traumatic upheaval in the village's period of time here. So, as things continue, things begin to settle down, the party is moving in and helping rebuild with the parents and the Snibs. They're getting really well together with the villagers. They're helping rebuild. And they're like, okay, this is great and all. We love helping you guys rebuild, but we need to go close that hole in the mountainside so that no more armies of the undead come out. Because that's kind of a thing we might have opened. Oops. So, they gear up the best they can with the diminished supplies from the half-destroyed village and head for the mountain. They head for the mountain, the same place they went at the very first adventure of the game. Alright, let's head for the cave entrance. It was a temple, it's now a cave entrance. So they go, they find the entrance, they deal with some undead on the way there, and they find that there's a lot of tracks in and out of the cave entrance. And they think, well, yeah, it makes sense. There's an entire army of the undead that came out of here. Of course, this would now be a trodden path that is visible for miles because it's, you know, the ranks of the undead came filing out 8 by 8. So, of course, it's all chewed up terrain now. And of course the undeath is leeching into the countryside, because of course it is. So they had to fight some undead bears on the way through the territory to get there. So, they reach the cave entrance, they're in the cave, and they're like, okay, so, how are we going to do this? They didn't think about how they were going to collapse the cave until they got there, and they're like, I don't know. Maybe? And so there's questions like, okay, what if we don't collapse the cave? What if we just destroy the source of the undeath? Is it the water itself? Is it something in the water? So they begin poking around while attempting to avoid fighting the undead. That there are a couple of possible solutions to this. That the undeath essence in the lake appears to be flowing from somewhere. So, okay, if we look around, we see that there is water coming in to the lake from somewhere, and that water is corrupted, and we can see that it's mixing in. On closer examination, we can see that that liquid is mixing with normal water. So that essence of undeath is coming from somewhere. Where is it coming from? Well, upriver. Upriver of this lake is where? So they start following an upriver. So they split into two teams. One team to collapse the cave entrance. Other team to destroy the source of undeath or block it up in some way. Both teams are wildly successful. The source of undeath is a absolutely massive corpse of a creature. I don't remember. I think it's a giant squid. I don't remember. Bulbous eyes and giant lumps of flesh. Anyway, so they're like, okay, we need to destroy the corpse. So, fireball! Blow it up! So, the explosions there, in conjunction with collapsing the cave, like, they do some checks to go, okay, where can we collapse the cave? Where can we collapse the cave? Will blowing up this collapse this section of the cave? And they're correct. It does. But their action to collapse the cave entrance, as well as the actions to destroy the source, have enough of an effect to have a cumulative effect. It has a knock-on effect. It also has a knock-on effect. It starts an avalanche, and then another avalanche, and then a cave-in, and then another cave-in. And then that series of cave-ins and avalanches causes an earthquake. That earthquake causes another series of cave-ins, avalanches, and earthquakes. The trickle effect of everything starts shaking real bad and for a long time as the entire cavern begins to collapse. And they rush outside and they can see that a good chunk of the mountainside has dropped by about 60 feet once they're outside. So the mountain's peak has shifted, the shape of the mountain has changed. There's now massive cracks and spiderwebs, terrain deformation happening all over the place, as massive underground caverns have shifted, cracked, and collapsed. And, oh, by the way, those massive new gorges that have formed halfway down the mountain, spreading from this crack, head right through the village. So the middle of the village has been cracked open like a fucking watermelon rind, with half the village in the crack, including her parents. So they rush back to the village like, holy shit, there is no way we could have known that would happen. We tried, we did our checks, we did the best we could. And it's like, yeah, you did the best you could. This was gonna happen. If you blew up and collapsed that cavern, it was going to set off a chain effect. That much geological activity inside the heart of a mountain created a chain knock-on effect that shifted a fault line. part of the continent moved because of what you guys did. What you guys blew up shifted thousands of tons of rubble. Thousands of tons of rubble shifted thousands of tons of stone. 100,000 tons of stone moving caused cave-ins. Cave-ins moved more hundreds of thousands of tons of rubble and stone. Once you start moving that much material in unexpected ways, things move. Things crack, shift. Loads that have been stable for centuries suddenly shift 2 feet to the right and crack and break. Knock-on effects happen, and they are horrific. They return to the village to find that the parents were trapped in the ground for a substantial period of time. Luckily, with the party's intervention, there's a daring rescue. The daring rescue reveals that while they were gone, there were other things happening, but not a lot. The parents got separated from the egg. The egg was somewhere in the house. The parents got separated from the house. They were out doing shopping when the earthquake happened and were not there. Therefore, they were on the side of a mountain with one parent dangled over a massive cavern by the arms of the other embedded in a wall of sand and rocks pinched in place. So they rescue the parents and they go, "We don't know where the egg is. Go find the egg." And so they are searching for the remnants of the house and egg. Find the house. Do not find the egg. They do, however, find remnants of portal magic, or short-range teleportation magic, I should say. And it's like, oh, there was someone here. Someone stole the egg. Knowledge Arcana, follow the magic. Well, we can try. So they try. They end up following the magic. It went that way. Oh, you can't get anything more than that. It went that way. So they begin chasing it down. They find Driders. Riders retreating deeper into the woods at speed. Driders left in positions to block them from following. They find a very large Drider escaping into the woods with Snibs. Now, the party is chasing these Driders. They're leading the party deeper into the woods. To an abandoned Feywild enclave. Abandoned because of the recent army of the undead. The Feywild survivors from the undead attacks had joined the village in its defense. Now, the abandoned Feywild enclave still has its most important feature. A Feywild portal. The Drider, with Snibs, enters the Feywild portal and collapses it behind him. Yeah. Stole the younger sibling. So, they are very hot on the heels of like, okay, how do we reopen that? And the Fey in the village are like, you can't. It's broken. You can never reopen a Feywild portal there ever again. It is a broken connection. Right. Oh, okay. Are there other ways into the Feywild? And they go, yes, there are many portals all over the world. They are scattered and hidden. You'll have to find one. You don't want to go into the Feywild, though. You will be murdered quite quickly. You are not ready for the Feywild. It will eat you alive. You need a guide to keep you out of the dangerous places in the Feywild. It's dangerous as fuck in the Feywild. So they're like, okay, so we need to go to a new village and find a way to the Feywild. Now, here's where the party begins traveling. They go to the next village over, and they go to the next village over. They eventually find a group of mercenaries that are like, hey, we could take you on our annual trips through the Feywild if you pay us. We do it once every 2 years or so, depending on availability of cash and the Fey elves in our party. But you'll need to pay us a big chunk of money because keeping you safe is different than from what we normally do there. So like, okay, mercenaries, a lot of money. All of the money we had from the mansion is gone. The village doesn't have any money, and what they do have, they're using to rebuild. So we've got no cash. We've got no money. What the fuck are we going to do about this? And so they're in this town, and they're like, okay, it's not good here. It's time to go. We shouldn't be here. So they leave that village, and they move on to find oh god, it's the swamps, isn't it? Is the Draconic City? There's a Draconic City that they come across. Yeah, it's before the swamps. Yeah, the Draconic City is at the edge of the swamps. In the Draconic City, there is a massive tower in the middle with a black dragon sitting on top of that runs the town. In this city is a number of guilds and groups, and that's where they meet the mercenaries. That's where they meet the other brother of the local character, the older Draconic brother, who's working in one of the groups. They also find a Teacup Dragon Cafe, which is as cute as it sounds. And it's teacup dragons, little tiny dragons with little tiny hoards of like single gold coins and piles of copper that run a cafe, and they heat tea and coffee and drinks in little ovens and little breads and confectionaries and things. And it's exactly as cute and as dashing as it sounds. So anyway, they spend a little while there. The brother's like, hey, I can give you some help, some supplies, maybe a little bit of magical stuff, a little bit of cash, but I can't really do much for the voyage. He's both saddened, happy, and enraged about all the news, like, 1, the village, oh my god. 2, little brother, yay. 2, little brother, oh my god! So, all of the above. So there's all of that. Okay, so they leave that city, begin heading into the swamp. They acquire basically a swamp riverboat, a crocodile-drawn boat wagon thing. It's an amphibious wagon drawn by a crocodile. Think Chattanooga-style wagon, but with a boat bottom and wheels. So it can go on land and water. And you, hiya, a crocodile. They called it Muffin. It was precious and lovely. So, as they journey through the swamps, there are a number of deep swamp denizens and swamp communes out here that they begin discovering are very upset with trespassers. Gutted and emboweled people on signs on the side of the road are a very clear sign of bad things happening. Now, as they travel down the road and they meet various people, they discover there's a conflict between the deep communes that live in the swamp and a recent military camp that has popped up in their path. And tales of dwarven military contingents the Dwarven Paladin is like, oh shit. The clans are involved in the war again? That's not good news. That's very bad. If the clans are taking sides again, this is going to get messy and fast. So, forgive me for idiots in the background who don't know how to use cars. Anyway, so during their journey towards this area, they come across a swamp dweller that they discover through staying the night is a undead dwarven tree man. Like, he's half man, half ent. I mean, he's half dwarf, half ent, which is enough to set the dwarven paladin hair on end of, you're half tree and half dwarf. You are all of the things wrong in this world. You're an undead druid necromancer? They're like, ew, no, wrong, evil, run away! Because they discover he's undead because he's revivifying the undead pixies in his tree every night. Not revivifying, but bringing back, reanimating again the pixies in his tree. So it's undead plant man is bringing dead pixies back to life every night and keep them alive, keep them safe. Doing what he told the party he was doing. He's protecting the pixies. Just not from what? So yeah, that's the thing that happened on the road. So they get past that. They get to the military encampment. They discover that, one, they're in trouble. Two, the commune is in a lot of trouble because there's a large military contingent here. There's military forces that are amassing. They're talking about finally dealing with the commune permanently. It's like, ooh, this is not a conversation we wanted to walk in on. We don't want anything to do with this. We don't want any of this trouble. We just want to go. And it's like, no, the lieutenant wanted to see you. You're going to wait here. Wait till the lieutenant's deal with it. And it's that, well, fuck this shit. And so the swamp druid, or the swamp warlock, is like, hi, I happen to have known these guys in the swamp here, and, fuck you. And they're like, no, fuck you. Fortunately for the party, just as they're getting into an argument and fighting with each other, and they're like, okay, hang them, they're obviously with the swamp people. As they're about to come down on them, there's a horn from the edge of the village. A war cry raises up. The village is being raided. Or not village, not... The encampment is being raided. And it's raiders this far south. Ugh! And they suddenly have much more important things to do. As mounted elven war cavalry break through the front lines and are parading through the village. Not parading through, but riding through. The raiders are attacking the village. So the players hop back on Muffin and leave. They're like, fuck this shit, we're out of here! Because they don't have time to get involved with the war in the swamp. They've got a kid to go save. Because, over the past few nights, traveling in the swamps, they have figured out the best option is to get back to the Elven Kingdom and use the prince's resources and money to pay for, fund, and go on an expedition into the Feywild. The elves will naturally have magic and the mercenaries and the forces to project enough force into the Feywild to find out what the hell is going on and where Snape's gone. So obviously, Driders in the Feywild is a thing that's going to be like, hey, that's kind of rare, what's going on here? So, they're like, okay, the princes become buddy-buddy with the players and the characters. Do they know there's romance happening between the prince and the local girl? The drow girl. And they're doing their thing. They're starting to build romance. during that voyage in the swamps where they have left, they discover, as they're fleeing the war camp, the raiders that are attacking that war camp start following them, which kind of makes sense. You're a raiding party attacking a war camp. One of the wagons in that war camp has just shot out the other side at full speed. Like, ooh, it's gotta be loaded with something good. Let's go steal that. So, a section of the raiding party has divided off and is chasing the wagon. As the raiding party gets closer to the wagon, the elven characters are able to make the perception checks to go, hey, that's not the famous contingent of elven hussars. They are trying to look like they are. Because they can spot the subtle differences, see the changes, go, okay, they're using illusion magic to cover up bad disguises. But it's enough of illusion magic to fool most people and fool you until close examination. Because as the magic fades, you get to see through the magic and start seeing the bad disguises underneath. They're bandits thinly veiled by crap magic. So the horses aren't as fast. Like, the horses should be faster than this. Nightmares have a movement speed of like fucking a bajillion. How are they barely able to catch up with Muffin? That doesn't make any sense. How are they barely able to catch up with Muffin if they're actually riding nightmare horses? They aren't. That's one of the giveaways of they are only able to just barely catch up with Muffin because they aren't actually riding nightmares. They're riding horses painted black with red painted manes. And then that thinly veiled illusion magic over wooden helmets that are shaped like theirs and painted with a little bit of glimmer glamour applied to it. They are bandits made up to look like elven hussars. The difficulty therein, they fight off the bandits, they reach the next town. The next town is the border city in the Draconic Kingdom. Now, they have to be very careful here because there's a large military contingent here. As they're approaching Border Town, like, okay, this is dangerous. There's a security checkpoint here. First one we've seen in a really long time. Okay, how do we sneak around? Why, it's a long ways. Try to sneak around, we'll probably get caught by patrols. Because it's the border town. We want to go through. Or better yet, on. Or in. So how do we sneak in? So they try to make arrangements to sneak into the border town. So the local thief. The thief takes them to a local crime lord who's like, ah, yes, welcome to my bar. How can I help you? I hear you want to get into the town. You're going to need credentials, and you're going to need fake ones or real ones. What do you want? So they go, well, considering we're going to need fake ones, we can't do real ones. He's like, that's really hard to do. You're going to need nobility of some kind, and preferably blood nobility. And the paladin is like, well, I'm a blood noble. I'll use mine. And the Crown Lord is like, oh, that's perfect. I can just kill you and use your blood. I fake thousands of passes. And it's up. Wait, what? Wait, what? So, the Crime Lord begins fighting them with all his minions in the water. Like, they're in a very bad, outnumbered situation. And it's really bad. They're outnumbered, outprepared, outgunned. And as they're fighting, out of the shadows around them, cloaked figures begin interceding in the battle on their behalf, tipping the tide of battle. And So as the battle comes to an end, the cloaked figures are like, hey, we should talk. We're the police. And it's oh, crap. Hi. And the police officer's basically like, yeah, you can't, you really shouldn't be here. And, yeah, he was gonna kill you and use your friend's blood to forge a couple 100,000 diplomatic passes into the city, which we couldn't allow. And so the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take your dwarven friend to the Dwarven Arcology. And you're all gonna stay out here and probably die. What? Well, yeah, there's purges every couple of months as we go through the outer area of the city and kill everyone. So you either leave or die. And so every couple of months, the entire population of the village has to either skedaddle for a couple of days, go live in the woods for a while and come back, or get murdered. Most of the village chooses to go hide in the woods for a couple of days while the purge happens of the diehards who won't leave or get the hint. And so the group is like, wait a minute, what? And they drag the dwarf, who's admitted that they're noble blood, into the city to the Dwarven Arcology. The Dwarven Arcology is a massive dwarven complex within the border city. It is a huge series of clan holds and various areas within a huge structure inside the city, with various clans represented. They, through shenaniganry in various bars and bribery, are able to bribe their way into the Dwarven Arcology with their teammate as his entourage, under the guise that he is becoming a diplomat for the Dwarven clans. So they get in. They're in the Dwarven Arcology. They're in the city. They're in the Dwarven Arcology. While they're there, under their waiting to get a diplomatic pass, buying time, they meet a draconic scholar in the libraries. He's been taken by Dwarven safety law. He's reading up on it. And he's thinking of implementing OSHA for his draconic kingdom. Why, if the kingdom was to adopt this, we'd cut death rates in foundries by half. It's a smart move, really. As they spend time talking to this draconic scholar, they accidentally, through the armband tattoos, discover his secret. He's a draconic prince. He's not supposed to be there. So they kidnap him in the middle of the Dwarven Arcology. They attack him, knock him out, take him back to their room. During the night, he gets free and is about to murder the party when he realizes that the armband has the greater significance than he remembers. As he spends, as he's about to plunge the blade into one of the party members, he remembers the story that his father told him about the armbands and what they meant. And so he then goes into the kitchen instead of stabbing the exposed flesh of the now party members. And yes, he went to the party members, the female friend, the local with the armband, had torn open their clothing and was about to stab them and went, oh no, I can't, can I? Went into the kitchen and started cooking. They're the kind of person that when they're stressed, they cook. So he made food, tons of it, because that's what he does when he's stressed. He fucking cooks. So when the party wakes up, they realize that their prisoner is free and has made them food. So they have a long conversation with the Dragonborn prince, for the first time exposing everything about what's going on with the armbands to the whole party. Hello again, Zero. I'm in the middle of a thing explaining my D&D campaign real quick. So as they're in the middle of explaining the armbands, he explains it to the rest of the party at the same time. The armbands that the Draconic Prince, Elven Prince, the player character have on their arms is a soul bond made by the kings, because her previous incarnation had saved the king's lives. And in return for doing so, they had saved the kings of both nations' lives at a peace conference that went wrong, where the kings discovered that it was their chancellors, respectively, that were keeping the war going. That there's various nobility within both of their kingdoms that are perpetuating the war. The kings and their royal lineages are now aware of this, and that her previous incarnation had saved their lives, and so they promised to have one of their descendants marry them to end the war, to bring both families into an agreement of whichever prince or princeling you decide to marry will become the royal line, and we will end the war. The other side will become subservient nobility to the other, and it will end the war. Because they both had a life debt to one person, they went, you can rule. Or you and one of our descendants can rule. But there was a loophole in the magic they cast on that soul bond to enforce that contract. So, the person they made the soul contract with was backstabbed on the way back out of the situation they were in by one of their subordinates, who believed that they were under mind control. So it was out of love. They're like, we're going to kill you, we're going to revive you and bring you back. You won't be under mind control anymore. And she's like, I was never under mind control, you idiot. You've killed me for no reason. And so she dies and is immediately reincarnated, making it so they can't revive her. They can't revive her because her soul has left her body and has been put into another body. So, normally, when you cast Revive on a dead player, the soul goes back into that body. But if the soul has already been put in another body, by the Oath Bond, you can't revive it because the soul is gone. So, you killed me for nothing, assholes! The magic demands fulfillment, in that soul must marry one of the royal descendants. Period. Oath made by the kings. So the party is like, what the fuck? You could end the war right now? You've got both princes right here. Marry one. Do it. And she's like, I have no idea what the hell you're talking about. No! So yeah, that gets fun. Because she's been having a romance developing with the Elven Prince, who kind of told her what was going on in private, just between them. But the Draconic Prince has kind of put it out on the table in front of the whole party, and it's yeah, we kind of knew about that already. We didn't want to tell anybody because it's fucking weird. So yeah, that's that. This is happening in the middle of the Dwarven ecology, where they've kidnapped the Draconic Prince. Now, the Draconic Prince is now aware, one, me or him or one of the other heirs has to marry you to end the war. I don't want you to die because I might not like the next you. But then again, if you were to die, you might come back as a Dragonborn next, and then I could get a much better chance of having it be somebody I like. So like, okay, we have a thing we're doing, we're still going to do that. How are we going to do that? And it turns out they decide, alright, so the fastest way back to the Elven Kingdoms, portal, teleportation travel, too expensive. Fuck. Because the Draconic Prince is here undercover, in secret, like he doesn't have access to his money. The Elven Prince is here in secret. He doesn't have access to any of his money. He's dirt broke and got just barely his signet ring from the rubble they were sifting through at the lake. So they've got to travel cheap. So they decide to take the princes on the train. Taking the princes on the train, well, it's dangerous, to say the least. Taking the princes on the train requires a diplomatic pass. Now, the dwarven player, Hildegard, goes to the local clan leader and is like, "Hi, I'd like to officially petition to become a diplomat for the dwarven nations and represent the dwarven peoples in the elven territories. My particular clan hold, specifically." And so they're like, "Okay, we'll give you a budget, and we'll give you a security detail." And he's like, "I've already got one." He points at the party. "They're my security detail." And they go, "Ah, okay, they're your entourage. They are also protected by diplomatic immunity. But we're also going to provide you with tax guard." And it's like, what? What's that now? And, "Oh, you don't remember classes? Tax guard. They're there to guard specifically the giant chest of money that is your budget. Oh, and by the way, while they were in this arcology, the head of the Dwarven secret police shows up and has a conversation with some of them as they're having these diplomatic talks about becoming a diplomat, and goes, "Hey, we're kind of aware of the fact that you're traveling with both the princes of both nations. This is not cool. Why didn't you tell us? Because we had to confront you about it." So that's the thing. That all pans through. Hildegard becomes a officially recognized diplomat with the party as his, or her, his? I don't remember. Entourage. The party is now protected by dwarven diplomatic immunity, for the most part, as long as they don't push it too hard. They spend a good chunk of their initial funding they get as their budget to get tickets for everyone on the train. They sell Muffin, the crocodile, and the wagon to the local secret police because they also had crocodile mounts, and they're like, "Hey, take care of our pet. We can't take it on the train." So they stock up just a little bit in the town, buying some weapons and a little bit of gear, using some of the budget, but they're in a rush, so they don't get much. That's after that. But anyway, they get some things in the Dwarven arcology before they leave, some supplies to tide them over on their voyage. They board the train. Boarding the train, it is a massive 3-story silver bullet affair of a huge apartment block-sized cabin cars that are 3 stories tall, that are riding on a bed of lightning underneath them. Now, this is the first any of them have seen that. They go through the boarding process. There are hints that there's something wrong with the way this company of this particular clan of dwarves does things in the boarding ceremony, where it's non-unionized or unionized trolls under very bad, iffy corporate rules doing all the loading, unloading, and security for loading and unloading, boarding and things like that. And say, okay, so there's iffy shit going on here that's kind of weird. The security's super tight, and it's like, well, it makes sense. This is the only train that leads to Centertown and then the Elven Kingdom and then back. It makes sense. There's a war going on. This is the only neutral train that goes through all 3 places. So of course security is batshit nuts. Of course there's weird shit going on fucking everywhere all the time. There's a war on. So they're like, okay, we can look all aside all that. We've got to take this train to the Elven lands to get to the prince's resources in the Elven Kingdom. Use those to get Snibs back. And then end the war? Question mark? Because right now all they have is save the kid. As a kind of shared group objective of save the child. Because that's what we're doing. If you're not on board with that, you can fuck off. Because the one goal they can all agree on is unifying and right. Regardless of which side of the war you're on. Of, no, that child was kidnapped by Driders. It has no idea what's about to happen to it. It's going to be possessed by a demon, for what we know. We don't want that to happen. So we're going to go, and we're going to save the kid. That's what that boils down to. So, from there, they're on the train. They're meeting people in the train department. They're in the nobility, VIP, not nobility, but the VIP section of the train. There is a nobility car ahead of where they are, but they're in the VIP car. So it's wealthy merchants, wealthy mercenaries, low-class nobles, things of that nature. That's why they're on the train, here in this compartment, and they're traveling for a few weeks. They discover that a leg of the journey is not in the prime material plane. It leads through Batorian Hells. One of the 9 layers of the Batorian Hells. And they're like, excuse me, bud. And they're like, no, the train is traveling through a temporal tunnel. It's a slice of time that can't be interrupted. So we're perfectly safe to travel through it as it goes through that chunk of planar existence. Because the section of time it's traveling through is frozen. Nothing actually happens to the train. We are looking out of that moment of time into a slice of a month of time in the largest battle in the history of the 9 Hells. So it's like, oh, okay, so there's a view of hell outside the train. It's like, outside the train is literal hell. And we're going through it? And they're like, okay, who decided that was a good idea? It's like, well, interplanar travel is the fastest way to cross large distances. So, you plane into another dimension, travel, and then plane out. There's a certain distance you have to travel in order to plane out. Like, there's dimensional shifting happening where you can only plane into a dimension so far away within that dimension. Like, think, if you will, all of dimensions overlapped on top of each other. Planar traveling between dimensions not only travels dimensions, but can travel a distance. So if I need to go a very long way, I want to cover as much of that distance in the other dimension as possible, with the difference between the portal entrance and the portal exit in the other dimension. So you stretch that portal as far as you can take it, and then you travel the rest of the way in that other dimension, and then you portal out of that dimension the rest of that distance, so that you have to spend as short a possible time inside that other dimension. And you make sure you protect yourself for that travel distance. Now, the train, as is explained when the players are investigating the train and what's going on and how it will work and all that, the train is in a temporal tunnel provided by the etheric tracks that the train is running on. Here in the 9 Hells, it needs an object to run on that is providing the enchantments that are protecting the train, that is holding up the temporal tunnel, all of these things. The train has layers of magical protection in the skin of the train that is protecting it from demons. That there's numerous holy enchantments imbued into the train to protect it. Hello! So, the train is very well protected against demons. There's a number of magical pacts and things that are protecting the train from demonic intervention during its transit through the 9 Baetors. During this transit, they meet a number of nobility, a number of VIPs and merchants, and they're explaining what's going on, and they're looking out on the view and going, oh, hey, there's that battle, and one of the half-angelic elves is like, yes, I remember this. I take this train all the time because it's viewing the battle where my husband died. And they're like, the party's like, oh man, grief-dumping elf lady that's part celestial? Not a good combo. But they do become friends with some of the other staff and some of the other members on the train. Doing so, they get to know, at a certain point in the voyage, the staff change. Rather suddenly and dramatically. And begin attacking the party. And it's like, oh shit, what has happened to the staff members? Like, we're under attack on the fanciest, most secure train in the world. What the hell? And so, from there, they have gone into fighting for their lives while on one of the fanciest and wealthiest trains in the world. I think beforehand, they got to enjoy some of the best cooking. Like, they offered foods of meats of any being in the universe. Well, we're in one of the wealthiest places in the world. Of course, we have meat ethically sourced from any of the 9 hells that is of any being you could desire. Anyway, back to the assassins attacking them in the night in the train. One of the assassins, as they're confronting it and killing it, does a bite the tooth moment where they go, ah, and they explode, blowing a hole in the roof of the train. Now, you can also guess why that would be a very bad thing. Why it would be a very bad thing indeed. Blowing a hole in the roof of the train that is protecting you against demonic invasion. Yeah, bad things. So, the demons naturally take note that the train is now exposed and like, hey, let's send a group to go find out what the hell is going on there. Now, that brings me back to the point I was starting to explain things in the Discord. So, the party have been intimately involved in blowing a part of the train up. They're taken hostage by security and like, alright, what the fuck is going on? What happened? They're interrogated. They survived the blast. They don't know if they're responsible or not. They're trying to figure out what the hell happened and why and who and how and when and all of that goodness. Security is like, alright, after a couple of weeks, or not weeks, but a couple of days, being interrogated, they're basically now just shacking up with security since their rooms are vented to open hell. They're kind of like, yeah, we kind of don't want to stay there anymore. Can we just stay with security? Seems a lot safer down here with the security guys. And so naturally they're hanging out with security and they're like, hey, yeah, there's a swarm of demons approaching. We're gonna go back and help the gunnery crew load. And they're like, excuse me, what? The gunnery crew? There's train-mounted artillery on this? And they're like, yeah, we've got a massive ballista on the back of the train for defending the train. It's like, well, can we come watch? So they do so. They go with security to the rear gunnery compartment, and they're watching the gunnery crew, which, a side note, all chief gunners for Dwarven emplacements must have a PhD in boom. And that Dwarven thesis pieces for studies in boom, kablam, and various mining technologies involve the creation of telephone pole-sized ballista munitions that are provided to the train via an extra-dimensional pocket, a portable hole, or a rotating magazine gun of portable holes filled with these telephone pole-sized exploding munitions of someone's thesis piece or mass-produced or one thing or the other. I'm something that explodes and is provided to the train or various other gunnery emplacements around the Dwarven kingdoms. It's a good reason to not fuck with the dwarves of, I've got a telephone pole that will explode in your face. From several hundred yards away. So, they're in the gunnery compartment watching this happen. They're like, oh, this is really fucking cool. These different, I'm having fun describing the different munitions and the loading process and all of the different things that are involved therein. They're listening and taking it all in. And as they're doing so, they explain to the gunnery, the master gunner, what happened to them, what happened to the train, because the master gunner's like really interested. Like, I heard you guys blew up part of the train. Now, it takes something very powerful to blow up part of this train, because it's got a lot of magic protecting it. Could you explain the explosion to me? Like, give me all the details you can remember. And he pulls out a custom munition and sets it aside and starts tinkering with it as they're explaining the explosion that happened. They're like, well, it smelled like this, and he did this, and his body swelled up like that before he popped, and they're explaining the explosion in as much detail as they can remember to the dwarf with a PhD in boom. So, he's tinkering with munition and doing this and that and the other thing, and they're like, yeah, they discovered that such and such was, their body was found in X cabinet, and, we're gonna do XYZ thing and try and deal with this problem. And then one of the other gunnery crew kind of turns to them and goes, well, we can't have that now, can we? And proceeds to screech and turn into a massive chimera mimic. That was the name. It was eluding me earlier. The name of the beast. It's a chimera mimic. And attacks the crew. As they defeat it, it divides in two. Ew. Disgusting. As they defeat the individual blobs, they explode with acid, sending bits everywhere. So it's also ew. This includes all over the munition. It starts to go off. They're like, oh fuck. That giant round that you've just been tinkering with is now going off. And they're like, oh shit, get it off the train. So they dump it off the train. They dump it off the train. It streaks off into the distance and explodes. It explodes into a black hole. Exactly. Bad news. So, it streaks off into the distance, explodes, turns into a massive black hole. Doesn't go away. Now, after all of this has happened, they're like, okay, the captain wants to see you all. He wants you to explain what just happened and why some of the security crew is gone. And what the fuck that was. And so they head back to the front of the train to meet up with the captain. Captain, that they had met before, is the leader of the security detail of, like, I'm in charge of the train, I'm the captain, goes, right, come with me, we're going to see the real captain. And it's a, what? Even the security crew are like, what? They're taken to a room beyond what they were told was the front of the train, or the engine compartment of the train, where they meet a dwarven thunder priest embedded in the wall, a la 40k servitor style, embedded in the wall. He is screaming. None of them have any idea why. His screaming eventually begins to modulate and turns into music that flows into the false captain's mouth. He then tells them, "Oh crap, we need to evacuate the train. Haven't you noticed the rising sound? The train is running at full speed." "What do you mean? Why is the train running at full speed?" "We can't escape it. Oh dear God, we need to escape." So the false captain is panicking while the real captain is doing nothing but scream. Yeah. So, as that happens, they start like, what the hell is going on? What's up? How did any of this happen? What do you mean he's embedded in the wall? Like, the players are like, oh god, he's part of the train? Well, it explains why it's a secret. Ew. Gross. And so they're like, okay, what's going on? And they eventually get the non-captain to stop panicking long enough to tell them that black hole behind the train, it's caught the edge of the tracks. Well, what does that mean? It's consuming the tracks. What does that mean? Well, we're riding on the tracks. Oh. The black hole is consuming the tracks, pulling them backwards into the black hole. Think about that for a second. The train is on tracks. It is driving down those tracks as fast as it can go. The black hole is pulling the tracks backwards into the black hole. They're driving down those tracks as fast as they can fucking go to try and escape the black hole. The train is aware that at some point, somewhere ahead of them, the track has broken. If it hasn't broken, the track is being stretched. If the track is being stretched, really bad things are going to happen. So they are trying to get down the track as fast as they can go. So, party comes up with the idea of, hey, let's go back to the gunnery compartment, get the ballista again, fire it at the track to sever the track so that it can't be pulled into the black hole anymore. They're like, great, perfect, it'll stop us from getting pulled in the black hole by the tracks. That'll solve our problem. Perfect. Let's go do that. And so the party hightails it back through the train, gets back to the gunnery compartment. The Chimera Mimic has reformed. They need to fire the ballista at the track to sever the tracks to keep them from being eaten by the black hole. They do this. They defeat the Chimera Mimic again. They fire the round. They destroy the track. The train crashes. Why, you ask? Put a slinky under pressure and then let go of one end. What happens? Boom! The train crashes. It is at this point that the magic compressing the train from many stories tall to only 3 fails. The train has crashed, and it has also decompressed. As in 2 floors below the bottom of the train and the floor the players are currently on have sprung accordion style and back into existence. This section of the train, as the players look at it from outside, they realize is ancient, corroded, made of brass, copper, stone, steel, and wood. It is also partially covered in fleshy stretches that are pulsating, writhing lumps of flesh. So, it is a clockwork body horror train that has now crashed. Oh, and by the way, they've just noticed, upon exiting the train, that the magic protecting the train from the demons is melting under their fingertips or their feet as they're crawling around the outside of the train. They're going, oh, I can feel the magical coatings protecting the train from demons, melting under my fingers, and I can see another demonic horde approaching. So there's demons coming. The train has crashed. The magic protecting the train is literally melting before their eyes. Oh, and by the way, if you look towards the front of the train, there is massing strobe lances of light coming up the front end of the wrecked train. And they've gone a little bit forward, and they discovered that the fuel compartment that they were told was coal is in fact a giant tank of blood that is now leaking into the abyss. So not only did the train not actually run on coal, it runs on blood of an indeterminate source, one of the party members decides to go lick. That's a thing that legit happened. One of the party members goes, I want to lick it. They lick the blood. They get a static charge throughout their body. And I inform them that they now know what god blood tastes like. And that they will forever be sought after by cultists as having divine blood. They are now a living spell component. And they're like, oh, well, fuck. So, the party members outside go back to the rear of the train, where the rest of the party is currently excavating people from the rubble of the train. A lot of people are dead from the initial impact of the train, but those decompressed floors have stuff in. The players begin fighting their way forward through the train, fighting various steampunk horror abominations, giant mechanical flesh-based spiders, a steampunk surgeon, and a biomechanical cyborg velociraptor. You heard that right. Steampunk cyborg velociraptor. They didn't fight it. They killed him before he could turn it back on. Wisely. So that's the thing. As they have explored more of the train, they have discovered more of its necrotic and necromancy nature, which is disturbing to all of them. They have just gotten to the proper engine compartment, which is a massive throbbing heart in a giant glass container with a massive steamwork pipes around it that is a puzzle that the party now needs to solve next week. That is the current state of my D&D campaign. It has taken, I don't know how long, taken 2 hours to legitimately explain the start and setup of the campaign to its current state. That is the current status of the overall plot of my D&D campaign. Individual happenings happen every week, every Monday evening. That is what I have to look forward to tomorrow night. I will be going into helping the party solve the steam heart. The heart of the dragon. Source of god blood. I wish you all a very wary and very merry good luck. Those of you watching this later, I will hopefully, in a few months, make another video updating Thusly. That is the state of my D&D campaign. Granular updates as to what exactly happens in each episode would be pointless,